Good morning. It's good to see all of you back on day 2 of the Critical Minerals Summit. I request all of you to please settle down and take your seats so that we can start with the program for the day. It is again an action-packed day, so please settle down. And if you have some friends who are outside, why don't you call them and ask them to settle down? Please clear the aisles and we'll start in a minute. Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the Critical Raw Minerals Summit, Enhancing Beneficiation and Processing Capabilities. I'm your host, Anisha Nair. A day earlier, we had an action-packed day where we got a lot of interesting ideas, on-ground experience, and data insights on how the critical minerals market can be developed. We also had informative presentations from the GSI and some academicians and researchers on the processes, methods, and technologies they are using in the beneficiation and processing of these CRMs. The deliberations over these 2 days will be very important as the insights gathered here will help the government in formulating either a mission statement or a policy for this sector. So keep your feedback coming. It'll be very welcome and very helpful. Now, record deployment of clean energy technologies is propelling huge demand for minerals such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, and copper. China dominates the world CRM exploration and processing market, and post the COVID pandemic's supply chain disruptions and the developing volatile geopolitical situation, governments are trying to de-risk the supply chains. India has announced incentives including exploration license to bring in private companies for extracting these critical minerals locally. But given the mountain that we have to climb, the industry will need broader pool of investors, greater liquidity support and hedging, stronger demand signals, and increased incentives to invest in sustainability. Now, India is called the pharmacy of the world, and we're amongst the top 5 producers of steel and automobiles. Can we create a similar global stature for critical minerals in our country? So our first, we'll start off with a panel discussion on the policy incentives and benefits for investing in India. And I would like to invite our speakers for this session to please come to the stage and take their seats. So please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Romil Ravi, Principal Investment Specialist, Invest India. Please welcome our other speakers, Shri Bhupendra Singh Punia, Managing Director, Odisha Industrial Infrastructure Development Corporation. Please welcome Shri V.G. Venkata Reddy, Director Mines and Geology, Government of Andhra Pradesh. Please welcome Mr. Mayur Karmarkar, Managing Director, India International Copper Association. Please welcome Mr. Samir Guduru, Director of Technology, Manufacturing and Supply Chains, US-India Business Council. And please welcome our moderator, Siddharth Goel, Senior Policy Advisor, International Institute of Sustainable Development. So I'll give a quick introduction of Siddharth Goel, and I will request him to then introduce all our speakers. Siddharth's experience and expertise lie in the fields of environment, energy, and sustainable transport, with a focus on policy analysis, project management, and communications. He holds a Master's of Public Administration degree from Columbia University, with a specialization in global energy management and policy. So over to you, Siddharth.
Thank you. Thank you, Anisha. So firstly, thank you all for joining us on day 2 of this Critical Mineral Processing Summit. We had some wonderful discussions yesterday on the opportunities and challenges of creating mineral processing in India. And today we have a very esteemed panel, including a representative of Invest India, Mr. Romil Ravi. So Romil is currently a principal investment specialist at Invest India with over 10 years of experience in investments, market entry, business expansion, and project management. In his role at Invest India, Romil is leading the investment promotion and facilitation into the metals and mining, chemical sectors, as well as a specialization in the Gulf Cooperation Council region. He has previously worked as a monitoring and evaluation lead at Niti Aayog, working closely with the Ministry of Finance. Thank you, Romil. Our next speaker is Shri Bhupender Singh Punia, Managing Director at the Odisha Industrial Infrastructure Development Corporation. Mr. Punia is an IAS officer of the 2008 batch, and he holds an MA in Geography from JNU Delhi. He has previously served as a collector in Kandhamal, Sundargarh, and Dhenkanal, where his primary focus was in tribal welfare and livelihood development programs. Later, he has also held posts such as the Project Director, Odisha School Education Program Authority, Chairperson of the School of Higher Secondary Education, Member Secretary, Mo School Abhiyan, and also State Project Coordinator of Odisha Adarsh Vidyalay. At present, he is the Managing Director, IPCOL and IDCO, and Additional Secretary, Industries Department, along with additional charge of Managing Director, Odisha Film Development Corporation. Welcome, sir. Our next speaker is Shri Vijay Venkata Reddy, Director of Mines and Geology, Government of Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Venkata Reddy is a seasoned administrator with a rich experience of working with both central and state governments. He is currently working as the Director of Mines and Geology since 2020. And he's also entrusted with the responsibility as VC and MT of APMDC. He has a profound understanding of the mining sector, which has been instrumental in shaping Andhra Pradesh's mining policy landscape and unlocking its mineral potential. Thank you for joining us. Our next speaker is Mr. Sameer Guduru. He's a Director for Technology, Manufacturing and Supply Chains, US-India Business Council. He was previously associated with the Ministry of External Affairs as a consultant with the New Emerging and Strategic Technologies Division. He's a physicist by training and was awarded his doctorate in engineering physics by Politecnico di Milano, Italy. Thank you for joining us, Sameer. And then finally, our next speaker is Mr. Mayur Karmakar, who is a Managing Director, India at the International Copper Association. He's been in this role since 2019. And as the India team leader, Mayur focuses on promoting sustainable development and advancing copper as a material of choice by connecting industry leaders, members, and partners to collaborate and drive progress. Thank you, Mayur. So in terms of the panel discussion today, we'll start out by Romil giving a general overview of the incentives that are available both at a state and central government level across the critical mineral supply chain, all the way upstream from mining to downstream in the form of batteries. And we're very privileged to also have two senior officials from leading states, including Andhra Pradesh and Odisha, to share their experience. That's really important since in our work at IISD, when we engage with international investors, we found that there sometimes isn't an awareness of the incentives that are really available at a state level. So there's often a comparison of federal or national level incentives between different countries. But when you actually combine some of the state level incentives with the national incentives in India, such as in the form of capital subsidies, electricity tariffs, land, India is actually quite competitive with many leading jurisdictions around the world. We also have Mr. Karmakar, who leads the International Copper Association, a mineral which is, I think, now the talk of the town as maybe the new oil or the new gold. And we have Mr. Sameer Guduru. I think there were a lot of talks yesterday about India and the US relationship and how critical it really is in terms of critical minerals. And there's been a lot of progress recently with India joining the MSP through regional groupings such as IPEF and Quad. And surely there's more that can be potentially unlocked at a bilateral level. So it'll be great to get some perspectives from Sameer on the bilateral relationship, as well as what exactly are international investors asking for. So maybe we can start with you, Romil. If you can give a quick overview of the incentives present within India. Yeah,
Thanks for that. A very good morning to everyone. I'm Romil, representing Invest India. And it's important when we are looking at discussing the critical minerals processing and building the ecosystem for that, that we take forward what has been the investment landscape of India, what has been the growth story that India has kind of captured in the last 10-15 years, pick up on that particular growth and set up a vision for 2047, as ambitious as perhaps critical mineral processing as we look at, but something that we believe once you have a clear vision, it makes it quite easy for you to achieve those objectives. So I'll run you through that also. Talk about the critical mineral landscape, and especially with respect to leading states like Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, which has come up. And of course, they will talk about the details. But I'll just give you the ecosystem which exists in terms of the land parcels available and the opportunity that are available. The market segments which are available for critical minerals, such as the EVs and the electrolyzers being manufactured in India. And then briefly touch upon Invest India and its role it can play in your investment journey. And to start off with, just wanted to highlight a few metrics. Of course, you would have seen these metrics all along. But the point I want to make in the India growth story is that when you're looking at India as the fifth largest economy, it is one of the only countries, large countries, which has around 7% growth and which would continue for a decade longer. So when you're looking at from a economy perspective, India provides that right opportunity for you to invest in the country. Want to talk also about the infrastructure. Why infrastructure is important is the scale and pace at which the infrastructure has been developed. Whether you talk about the physical infrastructure in terms of the rail, road, and airport networks, which are being built in the last 10 years. Also, the digital infrastructure which have been built in terms of the mobile connectivity and digital payment systems. Those become quite important when you look at building an ecosystem for investments in India. And the startups which have kind of leveraged the opportunity available and looked at any problem case, any business case which can be commercialized, and they've been onto it, where India has seen almost it's become the third largest ecosystem of startups that provides you solutions, that provides you commercial solutions on multiple projects and problem statement that the world poses for them. All throughout this particular journey that India has in the growth, you have to look at how the business and government reforms have happened. I would have had a slide on FDI reforms as well, but FDI reforms in the last 5 years, 2019 to 24, have seen major reforms in the coal sector, allowing private mining also in the sector. There is freedom of foreign direct investments in the insurance, banking sectors, in the retail sectors. All of these have led to minimum government and maximum governance. I think that is something which the government, when it came into power, also pictured in and has been reflected in the business and the governance reforms that the government has taken throughout. In terms of the business reforms and the government reforms, what has been the most spectacular achievement of the government has been the production linked incentives. Around 26 billions of incentives across 14 sectors have been given, and they're in multiple stages of their implementation. This would not just cater to the 14 sectors which are getting the production linked incentives. It creates a lot of demand for the initial materials like metals and chemicals, and in that particular context, it becomes very critical to analyze the production incentives and see the empirical analysis, empirical impact that it would have on multiple other sectors also. I already spoke about the technology and where India has become a 1 trillion digital economy, which it pays to become a 1 trillion economy, digital economy by 2026. And in terms of the mobile users, I believe that's very less for us to give evidence. I think everyone can see the kind of penetration the mobile has and the potential it has in terms of the digital platforms being built in. Just want to highlight and quickly move on to the next, where all the growth and development has happened in India. These have never been beyond sustainability and inclusivity. I think these have been the pillars of growth, I would say. When we're looking at growth, sustainability, and look at it from renewable energy capacity, which is being built in, or in terms of inclusivity, where the working population would be included in the in these economic activities. That's something which has always been at the key of any growth that India has seen in the last 10 years or so. These are just numbers, I think, in terms of not repeating, but 7% is something for a large economy that you're seeing as an opportunity, and it would continue for around next decade. I think that is something where a lot of potential for India reflects. It is not just the growth in private investments. When you're looking at the government expenditure, around 9 billion of expenditure is planned for 100 critical projects that the government is is pursuing in the next financial year, and out of, I believe, 1,000 projects which have been listed. So it gives you a focus intervention to implement those 100 critical projects would be perhaps essential for a lot of industrial clusters being built in, and for planning a lot of material movement all across. This has reflected also in the kind of exports capacity that India is building, and merchandise exports that India has built in, around 770 billion, has been one of the highest in the country. And for next 50 years, we'd be the youngest population. I think that's something which reflects on the potential that India has in terms of the number of people who would be working and skilled workforce that can be built in for any investments that the world thinks of in India. These may look very ambitious, but this is the Vision 2047. And just wanted to highlight a few of these numbers where we're looking at building a second largest economy in the world with a $32 trillion dollars economy, with a 22,000 per capita GDP. These are ambitious numbers, but this is where I think a clear vision and where the role of critical mineral processing would also come in, where you provide sustainable living for this population and the strength that the GDP is posing for it. And when we are looking at the domestic production, the manufacturing growth has to be around 6.2 trillion, and services, of course, moving to 20 trillion. I think these are the potentials that put across a larger strength in what India has to offer to the world. And all of the three earlier pivots on economy, per capita, GDP, and manufacturing share of the GDP, all this would be through a lot of FDI coming into India, India exporting to the world and leveraging the human capital which exists in India, as I already mentioned. This I've already spoken about the ecosystem which exists. Just want to highlight a point that 80 startups are recognized every day in India. So any problem you can think of, perhaps there's a startup which is working on that particular solution. So leverage this ecosystem that can really pave the way, especially in critical mineral processing, which is one of the where technology is high, where scientific intervention is pretty high, but how do you commercialize those? I mean, we can leverage the ecosystem of startups which is available in India to take this forward. Quickly jumping on to the critical minerals landscape in India, just wanted to highlight a few interventions where which have been enablers in terms of policy, where we have set up ambitious targets on renewable energy, the PLIs in the 14 sectors, a cluster-based approach. I think that is very critical, and of course would be subsequently discussed by the state government officials on how we are building cluster-based investment regions, and which would be very critical to building capacities for critical mineral processing as we look at sourcing the critical minerals from different countries. The economic growth is well aware in terms of the opportunity exists. And industry where what I want to highlight, it could be the only sector or one of the few sectors where the market has already developed. You have the EV market already developed, the OEMs already developed. So once you do a backward integration in terms of critical minerals and processing and providing it to battery manufacturing, I think that is something that can be further leveraged in terms of India and the workforce which is available. Just want to highlight on the demand sectors, not getting you through too many numbers, but with just one point that with 2% EV penetration in India, we are looking at $1 billion of market spend on the battery mineral value chain. So if we are targeting 30% penetration by 2030, look at the kind of potential it has for battery components being manufactured and the role that critical minerals can post here. And this is to just highlight how proactively states are also picking up the EV policies. Around more than 20 states in India have dedicated EV policies. So there's policy ecosystem which already exists. I believe it is time that people think of sourcing the critical minerals into India and building the ecosystems in different states. What I've also done is mapped few states which have the battery components manufacturing regions already available in India. And you look at these states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. And what I would use it with is this one. There are dedicated investment regions called the PCPIRs, which are chemical investment regions in the states of Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, and a newly commenced in Rajasthan. All these can be mapped automatically to Gujarat being a center for critical mineral processing, also a hub for critical battery component manufacturing. Similarly, when you're looking at the Rajasthan PCPR, it can very well cater to the NCR battery manufacturing component cluster which has developed. So just to highlight a point that these are so very well mapped when you look at states and how the ecosystem are being built in, that it becomes a natural only to select your investment destinations all across in the PCPR states and leverage the value chain all across. This is just to highlight the 14 sectors where PLIs are here, and of course I can draw empirical analysis and build upon the empirical evidence on what these $26 billion of production linked incentives can provide an opportunity for critical minerals. All of these production incentives will drive economies of scale, and where we've always heard from the critical mineral processing companies that we're not able to achieve the economies of scale. I think that is this slide is just to reflect the kind of scale that India is looking at going in next 5 to 10 years time. And just a brief about Invest India. Invest India is the National Investment Promotion Facilitation Agency, working under the aegis of Ministry of Commerce and Industry. We are very delicately placed, I would say, between the government and the industry, where we are supporting the government initiatives of Make in India, but also promoting what industry wants as building domestic capabilities. Any issue that they face in terms of their investments landing into India, we are there to handhold them all across their journey in investments. And this provides a range of services that provide that Invest India provides. And since we are funded by the Government of India, we are a pro bono agencies. So any inputs that you would need in any stage of your investments, we have dedicated teams in countries, in sectors, in states who would help you throughout your journey and help you as a dedicated team, young team that you would reflect perhaps of India going forward in next 50 years, very dedicated with the national cause of Make in India, and we'll be working all across with you. Thank you. That's my time.
Thank you, Romal. Thank you for that excellent overview of the incentives available. What I found was very interesting was when you shared that map of PCPIR and the batteries, and really the opportunity for maybe even collaboration across states, in terms of creating an ecosystem. With that, we'll move to Mr. Punia. So, Mr. Punia, there have been, several announcements by companies in Odisha recently. Odisha itself is a major mining hub as well for India. So could you share a quick overview of what the ecosystem, the ecosystem that exists in the state, and what are the kinds of incentives, both fiscal, non-fiscal, that are available for investors who are considering an investment in Odisha?
So, good morning, all, esteemed panelists, respected invitees. So, on behalf of Government of Orissa, I will take you through the growth story of Orissa, as well as the opportunities available in the state of Orissa. So, those who are not informed or aware about the state of Orissa, so for them, I will just explain. We are 8th largest state in the country. We are on the eastern seaboard, and why we call it land of new opportunities. So to any economy to grow, I think these 5 things are very much essential now in this very competitive environment. That is strong economy, and the abundance of natural resources, or we call the locational advantage also. Modern industrial infrastructure, we will discuss later in details for each of these. Best in policy, what Siddharth was saying, the incentives we offer are very, very lucrative, and we facilitate investors in such a way that there is no problem from commissioning, from application to grounding of the projects. So few figures just to show that we are one of the fastest growing state in the country consistently, and we are mid-sized state. But if you see, we are one of the highest revenue surplus state in the country. That's why not only we are offering the incentives, but we can honor those incentives. So that's why we are confident that whatever is being promised will be delivered. Third is you can see, I think that in attracting investments, not only the intents, I am saying the bank financial closed projects. If you see, we are third in the state, in the country, and in intents we are second. We are second to Maharashtra only. So you can see the being a small state comparatively, as geographically and population wise. So our position in the new investment wave is very good. And Odisha is known for minerals. So if you'll see that we have reformed our mining sector, that now allocation is online, e-auction, through our Odisha Mining Corporation, state-owned PSU. We have also a vision for the value addition. So from the industrial investment point of view, our aim is that by 2030, whatever primary metal we are producing in the state of Orissa should be processed and more value addition should be done. Then for long-term linkage policy, so those who don't have captive mines, or have not participated or not successful in taking their own mines, through our state mining corporation, we provide them assurance of raw material, so the investor can feel certainty of availability of the raw material for their establishments. And we use advanced technology and digital solutions. So our triple IMS system, from mine to the final destination, is being tracked. So it's very transparent system. So as I was saying, that Odisha is known for minerals. So you can see that we are number one in the country in iron ore, bauxite, manganese, chromite, nickel, and second in coal. Also, we are the highest producer of steel, stainless steel, aluminum, and alumina. So it leads to the kind of infrastructure required for these quantities. As on today, we are producing around 35 million metric ton of steel. So to produce that much of steel, into 5, we have to move this much of raw material and finished product. So as far as the mining sector is concerned, We are doing large scale mining, as you have seen that we are number one in the country in many of the major minerals. So we provide all kind of support from exploration to the processing. So that is the entire value chain where ore mining, beneficiation, metal production, alloys, specialty, steel, because we are number one in steel production. But for specialty steel and other specialty chemicals, we have the dedicated policy for that. Also, as I mentioned, for these major minerals, we have long-term linkage policy. Those who do not have mine, their own mine, they can take it from Odisha Mining Corporation. So in critical mineral also, because today's summit, and it's very, very important that we are also only as of now known for the major minerals, but we have abundance of critical minerals also, and also rare earths. So you can say the mineral sands are a major source of ilmenite, rutile, monazite, zircon, and also we have good potential in graphite, copper, nickel, and cobalt also. So that's how the our entire mineral resources, not only the major minerals, but for the critical minerals, Odisha is well endowed with by nature. Apart from that, in processing, you require few critical things. One is water. So not only the mineral resources, we are rich in water resource also. So we have around 11% of India's surface water resources. We are one of the power surplus state. So you know that we are second in the coal production, and our we have around 18,000 megawatt of installed capacity, and mostly because of the large industrial complexes. Major part of it is in the captive, but rest also we have very sufficient and the power surplus state. As I mentioned that we produce so much of the primary metal, steel, stainless steel, aluminum, aluminum. So for that, you need ports, you need railways, you need good highways, you need railway sidings, you need slurry pipelines. So all infrastructure exists in this state, and it's expanding as we are growing. And also the our future target by 2030 is that we we should be producing around 100 million metric ton of steel, so tripling the existing capacity. So for this, heavy infrastructure is required, and our state is in attuned to that, and at all levels it's large investment is being made in the infrastructures. And we are port based, on the promoting port based industrialization now, because many of these large industrial complexes, they are dependent on import and export. So Paradip port is India's largest port now, handling the bulk cargo. Apart from that, you can see from the map that Kolkata Chennai highway, and then we have developed in the western part of the state our economic corridor, where all major our mining area and also the agriculture belt is connected. So it's opening the hinterlands of the Orissa, not only of the Orissa, but the adjoining state like Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand also. So this is the kind of infrastructure is available. I will focus on the ports. So as of now, we have four major ports: Subarnrekha, Dhamra, then Paradip, and Gopalpur. So these port locations, we have ample land, water, power, and infrastructure, which will be very, very enabling for the kind of processing of the critical minerals is concerned. So I think this is the one of the advantage that many of the states do not have. So as far as the fiscal incentives are concerned, as I mentioned, that we have one of the best incentive structure in the country. So for rare earth based mineral processing or value addition, we have 20% of capital investment subsidy without upper cap. So whatever, if you are investing 1,000 crore, then it's 200 crores. If you are investing 10,000 crore, then it's 2,000 crore. So for capital investment subsidy, there is no upper cap. Then also, as it was that to make it more competitive and to handhold the investors in the initial years, we also provide 100% exemption on the electricity duty. We also reimburse rupees to power tariff for up to 7 years. And let me tell you, our power and water tariffs are very, very competitive. So landing cost of power tariff as of now in Orissa is around 6 rupees. And on top of that, we will reimburse you 2 rupees for 7 years. So I think it's quite substantial, because most of these processing technology are energy intensive. So they consume lot of power. We also encourage captive green power also through floating solar plants or wind energy or pump storage or small hydro projects. So that's how we are also taking care of sustainability. That's those who want to make green minerals, green steel, green aluminum, or for the critical mineral processing. For the captive, we also incentivize. It's not only that we facilitate them, but we incentivize them to go green. Again, 100% net SGST reimbursement, whatever domestic sale happens. At this point, I will also tell that India is not only, or for that matter, Orissa, not only the young country or the young state, but we are going to be a big market in future also. That many people think, okay, we are not able to compete, or we have to export only. We keep attending different seminars and summit on different sectors. So recently held Indian Chemical Council. So there is a lot of opportunities for that also, because these are interlinked. If we are producing primary metals to such an extent, then for that you require so many additives, chemicals, and also other mineral components. So there is huge market in the country and also in Orissa, because around 1/3 of these primary metals are being produced there, and in next 8 to 10 years it's going to be 2 times or 3 times. So the huge market which exists in the country, and the future projection, as Romil was saying, that in next few decades we are going on the same or even faster growth trajectory. So there's ample opportunities for investors to invest in these critical sectors, which we are dependent as of now from on exports. And also employment subsidy. If you employ local people, then we reimburse 100% of ESI and EPF up to 5 years on behalf of the investors. So these are the subsidies or the capital investment incentives available in the state of Orissa. As I mentioned, I also represent Investment Promotion Corporation of Orissa. So on behalf of the government, I can assure you that we have best in class facilitation mechanism. It's online. You don't have to go. Many people say that, okay, single windows have many doors, but we are plugging all doors and windows and making it true single window. So you don't have to, whatever has to be done by our single window agency that we call EPCOL, Investment Promotion Corporation of Odisha. So we help from filing of application to grounding, and even after, we have a concept of called aftercare. So after commissioning, if there are any hiccups, then also we are there. So it's not that when investment commercial production started, our work is over. We are always there with the investor to help him to make it more fruitful and win-win situation for the state and the investor. And also, so we have been talking about ease of doing business, ease of living, but cost of doing business, I think one of the component very, very critical for the investor. So for in that respect, Odisha is very, very competitive if you compare with the existing industrial hub, which at times have started showing negative externalities. So you see subsidized land, because we have land parcel available with us, government land parcels, also acquired land parcels are available at highly subsidized rate, because the mineral processing, they require large chunks of land. Water supply I have already mentioned, because we are blessed with that. Power I have already mentioned, so will not repeat. Not only availability quality, but also at affordable price. Logistic cost, as I mentioned, I have shown you that our ports, they are not that over congested. We are developing the rail network, connecting with the dedicated highways. Also, because our projection is that in next 10 years, our the logistic infrastructure required to be enhanced further, because we are one of the state I will be discussing that we have auctioned I think highest number of mines under the new regime, and around half of those mines are already operational, and in near future many will be auctioned and made operational. So for that we require huge logistic infrastructure, which we are developing, also supporting the private players in developing that infrastructure. Then other very critical thing, which I think was also mentioned by Romil, I think, that highly skilled workforce. So Odisha in the last 1.5 decade, we have been investing heavily in skilling our youth. So we have World Skill Center. We have also dedicated Odisha Skill Development Authority. So the World Skill Center, you can see the in picture. Yeah, thank you. I will just complete it. So we have very good ecosystem for the skilling, and it's our, on behalf of Government of Odisha, I can say that we can train if you recruit people as per your requirement in Odisha or in other facilities at our own cost. And also we have a very good network of the national institutes working in different sectors, especially skilling also. So the availability of skilled manpower is one of the very attracting factor, which we are I think is showing result in the investment intents and the financial closures of the projects. So that we have. So I welcome all investors. We are here. If you have any question, queries, you can get in contact with any of my team members or with me, or you are most welcome. You can visit whatever I am saying. You can visit Odisha and can feel for yourselves. So thank you for providing me this opportunity. Thank you for the process.
Thank you so much for that excellent overview. What I found really interesting was, when you mentioned that Odisha is also looking at downstream value addition. So looking at 50% downstream value addition. This is something that we also discussed yesterday, when we're looking at some of the countries in Africa who have a lot of mineral wealth. They're also looking at ways they can capitalize on those opportunities. Thank you for sharing that. Now, if I can move to you, Mr. Reddy. So I think we've spoken a lot at sort of how the national government is seeing critical minerals, but it'll be very interesting to understand how are states, as a mining expert yourself, how are states really seeing critical minerals and this opportunity, and really how this can fit in with the state's own growth story. So if you could touch upon that, and also, what kind of incentives or, ecosystem approaches you all are following in Andhra Pradesh to actually attract investment towards the state.
Now we are talking about the critical minerals. As far as critical minerals are concerned, the Government of India is taking care of the policies and all these things. And in the recently, they have so many amendments to the MMDR Act and liberalization of the EL policies and all these things. So that's why you have to establish the reserves of the critical minerals. As far as the present scenario, these only resources, establishing reserves is only 10% of the critical mineral sector. This is one of the challenges in India. So that's why you have to focus on the exploration and establish the reserves, and exploitation will come next. So that is why this is the one of the challenges in India, facing India. And however, recently, Government of India has given 38 auction blocks for critical mineral blocks. In Andhra Pradesh, we have identified 4 blocks. Out of 4, 2 blocks have been auctioned now. So these critical minerals, we have a lot of difficulties in experiencing in the rare earths like illuminate. Process end product is titanium and titanium pigments. And zirconium is also one of the critical minerals in this. Here, the government of India is given only if the public sector undertaking can do the mining activity. In the mining activity, the process is wet concentration plant and MSP that we can afford. But end product for processing these, it's technology transfers is required and a huge investment is required. As a public sector undertaking, it is very difficult. So that's why we are looking forward for the private sector. We can take to end of the titanium products, which will revenue to the state as well as the government of India's sector. So now I request this government of India take an initiative to beneficiation of this these and minerals to the end product. And as far as Andhra Pradesh is concerned, you are giving the road connectivity, rail connectivity, and port connectivity is there. Already, Government of India has given 10 corridors. Out of 10, 3 corridors is going in Andhra Pradesh. That is Visakhapatnam to Chennai and Chennai-Bangalore corridor and Hyderabad to Bangalore corridor. So these all these 3 corridors, it's good connectivity in all the districts. So that's why it will be benefit to the industries. And also we are giving some incentives to the industries, mining industries, that is electricity subsidies, and also the single window system, like, and ease of doing business. And government of Andhra Pradesh, it stood first rank in the last subsequent last 3 years. And also we have as a global summit has happened in Visakhapatnam in March 2023, and Western Australia, Perth, they are collaborating with the exploration of this and renewable energy, research and development of renewable energy and gold and critical minerals also. So that is one of the progress we have made. And also the ports are concerned. We have one major port, Visakhapatnam, and four minor ports are there. Apart from, where 3 ports are being constructed, minor ports, to encourage the exports and imports.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. Now, if we can just maybe, move to a slightly different perspective. So I think, we've got an excellent overview of the incentives, the policies at a central and state government level. But if we can move now to understanding the investor perspective, and if I could move to you, Samir, what exactly are, investors basically talking about in terms of the challenges, in terms of critical mineral processing in India? And, I think yesterday we also spoke a lot about, ways to strengthen the relationship between India and the US. So if we can also talk about a bit more about that, where exactly the opportunities lie in that space and what more needs to be done, to facilitate increased cooperation.
So let me just begin with a slightly bilateral perspective. Can you hear me now? So let me just give an overall understanding of the bilateral work that is being carried out in the sector before I come to investor part. So as far as the US-India bilateral is concerned, as you know, in June 2023, when Prime Minister's state visit happened to Washington, D.C., the MSP was signed. However, there are a lot of challenges as far as identifying exactly where India can play a role in the larger value chains. That is something that really has to be established. I think there are task forces that have been created at the bilateral level to identify what can be done, exactly what are the exact materials to be targeted, so on and so forth. I'm sure Damon here will be aware of things like that. Additionally, we had several opportunities of hosting senior officials from the US Department of Energy, especially Ambassador Jeffrey Pyatt recently, where we had an industry roundtable just to understand and map out what are the opportunities, not only for US companies investing in India, but also Indian companies increasingly investing in the US. So, for example, there is this company called Epsilon Carbon that is looking at investment in Colorado, if I remember correctly, where they're looking at production of graphite and things like that there. So one of the things that has to be navigated very carefully here is how does the US domestic policy impact their international work? For example, you have the Inflation Reduction Act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, so on and so forth, that are kind of focused on bringing in investment into the US. There were concerns also raised by the European Union back in the day, right? So I think the discussions around this are at a very nascent stage, especially at the bilateral level, because you see, for India, the perception that is there in the world about India is that we still are kind of very low tech when it comes to mining, and there is a lot of requirement of bringing in high tech as far as mining is concerned, and you're having concerns about ESG and other compliances. So there are a whole host of issues that have to be sequentially addressed before we can actually look at any sort of major investment in the mining sector that have to happen, that will be happening in India. The other point that I really have to raise here is mining financing. So we have also done some events around mining financing and how bankers or other investing firms can look at mining in India. There needs to be a lot more policy clarity. There needs to be probably schemes like the PLI specifically addressing the mining sector, not only the manufacturing part like the ACC, but also looking at mining, for example. So those sort of incentives and more policy clarity, and of course there will be a lot more things that are also happening at the bilateral, multilateral level. Let's say both the countries, the US and India, for example, as a part of MSP, can probably look at mining jointly in other countries like Peru, or African countries, or Southeast Asia, where you have nickel deposits, so on and so forth. So those sort of avenues have to be explored. There needs to be a lot more multilateral discussions at the level of Quad countries, so on and so forth. As you know, Australia is a big country as far as mining is concerned. So I think we should also have a domestic approach where our investors can start approaching. I mean, Adani Group is already mining in Australia, so we need to have those sort of mechanisms operationalized so that we can start probably sourcing minerals from other countries, not only domestic exploration. I mean, I was very glad to hear my colleagues from the governments in Odisha and Andhra discuss these matters. So I think we are heading in the right direction, but it will definitely take time before we can actually focus on what our priorities are, what our strengths are, so on and so forth. And that I think is the only way ahead. Other point I probably can make here is it's not only about how we look at the world in general and the investments coming from there, but what about us domestically as far as R&D and skilling and things like that are concerned within India? So do we have the talent pool that is adequate and necessary for high-end mining? That is something that really has to be taken into account. Unless that happens, I mean, you'll be stuck in the same situation where a lot of other sectors where you see companies that are investing in India eventually end up skilling Indian talent. So we have to think on those lines as well. So we will have to prepare our market so that these things can happen in a smoother fashion. So it's a mix of several factors. Apart from that, one of the other opportunities definitely is seabed mining, which definitely has a lot of potential, still kind of underexplored. So far, most of our activity has been restricted to domestic approach. We'll still have to figure out a manner in which we can start engaging with other countries and do probably joint explorations and things like that. The other thing is, I think energy as a sector may find its presence in the future in sectors, initiatives like the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies under the US and the bilateral. The ISET was supposed to happen actually earlier this month, but unfortunately it got cancelled because of the situation in Israel and Iran. So I'm sure we are all heading in the right direction as far as mining and critical minerals and discussions like this are concerned. But let's be more focused. Let's skill our people in our country, and definitely look at joint opportunities also in other countries. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Samir. Mayur, now if I can move to you. There's obviously been, a lot of focus on the new critical minerals in India, but copper has been around for a really long time, and it is a critical mineral in India's, list of critical minerals. So really, what experiences do you think we can draw from the development of a copper refining industry that can, help guide the creation of processing or refining of the other critical minerals in the future in India?
Thanks, Siddharth. Yeah, copper is critical, but it's not new. Uh, Particularly copper processing is a high capex, high opex operation, and therefore you always have to look at with the business sense. Uh, Back then, when India had got their first generation of the smelters in 97, 95, the business environment was the same. But what was the business sense for putting up smelter back then is more about the the some sort of the duty protection for making the custom smelter viable. Uh, that has created the investors' right appetite to put the smelter, which is multi-million, almost $1 billion investment, and particularly, in a metal, particularly in copper, your processing revenue or the surplus revenue is very small. There's a big myth in a room, or now it's getting larger education is happening. But I remember the good old time when people used to say copper is $8,000. It's always they used to presume that the smelter, sitting there is earning that much of the money. It's not so. So there is the the international, very transparent process of understanding how much that smelter refiner earns, the processing charge, processing of the metal can bring in as the this addition to the revenue. So overall, in this environment, there was some sort of the duty advantage. But today, with the globalization and also the taking all the duty related issues out, the commercial viability has to looked at. And therefore I would like to thank Invest India and also the Odisha government of understanding that need and creating those incentive policies, which is very much essential for the mineral processing. The second and important thing which is there with respect to the how overall the smelting or the copper from copper, what are the byproducts and how those byproducts are creating the market and help to make your business model even stronger. Yesterday we heard about from the Vedanta person here, is that they are largely focused of creating the alumina to aluminum as a production, and there is no business model in their mind to develop out of the various other derivatives which they get out of it, which includes in copper is associated with other minerals. So therefore, taking out those minerals should be also commercially viable. Yesterday, Bala mentioned about how the inverted duty structure disturbed the ability of creating such minerals. So I would like to give an example here. When we started our smelting refining journey in India, China was at the same capacity or even lesser than that. But after that, that is last 20 years, the capacities are ramped up to 15 million ton, world's largest capacity. In my tenure here in International Copper Association, I got ample of the opportunity of seeing the plants elsewhere. And I've seen the orientation of the smelter refiner of extracting other mineral and marketing that globally was also there in the vision of the plants, and therefore a lot of R&D at the plant level was being funded by the provincial government there in China. So I never heard of selenium and the selenium market, but they were trying to see how they can get the selenium global market. One of the Chilean smelter is talking of the molybdenum, how the global molybdenum can, market can be created. So it's not about when you look at the processing of the one metal or one mineral, we have to also look at the byproduct and creating the understanding the market of that byproduct and seeing how efficiently we can create it. The next trend today, I mean, I said that, the critical mineral is also race now, is a global race. Now, within that global race, we have to see how our processing capabilities get prepared for the future requirements. Now, there is a huge demand, and we have been talking about the automotive sector and the EV. There's a huge demand of responsible sourcing coming in. Now, are the processing plants what we are looking at, and we want to create them in future? Are they complying to all, future requirement of the sustainability criteria? And that is very crucial in terms of designing plant and the processes and creating the business model out of it. Else, we will miss that bus and then we'll lose the competitiveness.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, you raised a really important point on the duty structure. And that's something that, we're also highlighting through a upcoming copper brief. I actually have now one question for the whole panel. So whoever feels, keen to respond. Basically, how do we send the right signals to the market? Some companies feel like this is really coming in the future, a lot of the critical minerals. So is it enough for the government to just set the right direction and then industry will follow? Or really, does it require something that I think Tom mentioned yesterday, where we really need to attack this opportunity, in terms of providing incentives, in terms of really reaching out to companies, to encourage them to invest in India? Romil, would you like to go first?
Thanks. Working? Yeah. So I, perhaps just look at a few aspects of it, and my colleagues can, look at the others. One, of course, is giving the comfort of platforms like MSP, IPEF, Quad. I think that can give the kind of security that businesses are looking at, especially when you're looking at a project in, say, politically unstable African country. What this particular network and reassuring this network's confidence in the business can do is get the businesses to evaluate these projects and perhaps look at the political risk more with the comfort of different governments giving them the security that they need. Apart from that, I believe has to have a lot of business to business conversations also at a government to government level. Projects have been identified at different forum. But if businesses don't take these and identify these projects and do the feasibilities and subsequent processes, I don't see that particular positive sentiment or looking at investments more actively can be secured. In terms of creating the right jitters, we are there in terms of any information that the investors would need in understanding the ecosystem, get you the state's allocations, land allocations, incentives structure for you. So those are some of the things that we can do, but at a business to business level and also in a third country, how these platforms can be leveraged and given these confidence to the businesses. I think these hold key in terms of getting these into actualizations.
So thank you. I think incentives are important, but not the kind of which investors take so seriously when they make investment decision, because investment may be for 5 years, 10 years at best. But for making informed investment decision, I think first of all, I think we have to have kind of information with us. So we have to tell to the investors that these opportunities are available. So now mostly whenever we discuss about the critical minerals or specialty steel, or for that matter specialty chemicals, we always think, okay, there is excess capacity in one region and all that. So but if we consider our domestic market, I think that can give good comfort to the investors if we can project them in a proper way. Definitely we have to approach them. If opportunity exists, then it has to be popularized. Third, I think the kind of certainty they want, because if there is uncertainty in any of the things, then I don't think the investors in these kind of sectors, where these kind of sectors, where they will be, coming forward to invest in large quantity. Second, I think as far as these kind of industries are concerned, as I mentioned, if we can develop few clusters, because there's a lot of interdependence, there's a lot of R&D required. As I mentioned, I think Mayur mentioned that no, earlier were the days when you require huge investment, big smelters, but now I think technology be can be modular. So in many of the end product of the, or the waste product of one of the refiner or industry can be the input for the others, and the whole ecosystem of investing, and then recycling kind of thing. So whatever, and popularizing and economically deriving the other metals, which creating market for them. So as far as critical minerals and the specialty chemicals are concerned, I think investors are the best person to guide us. But I think the cluster-based approach with R&D, skilling, everything inbuilt will give some kind of confidence to the investor. And secondly, I think access to the market and access to the world. So port-led prosperity, what they're saying. So I think that can also help investors to have more confidence apart from the incentives. So that's from my side. Thank you.
Actually, this is critical minerals are concerned. It is an initial stage in India, so that's why you have to have confidence to the investors. Suppose it is a profit and commercially viability and all these things, you have to establish, and we have to have confidence into the investors, and also you have to technology transfer from the other countries, can establish the thing, then only the investors can attract the critical mineral sector. And as far as state government is concerned, we have to infrastructure, land parcels, and road connectivity and ports have to be, and other industrial concessions to be provided to them, so that they will attract the investment or the investors.
Sid, from my side, again, based on the copper experience. Today's investor has a lot of, ways and means to do the due diligence into the new investments they wish to do. I must tell you that there are all these global mining companies, economic advisors or economists keep on visiting to India, keep meeting different people. And one is of giving the commitment verbally, it looks a bit political, but when the incidence of, Vedanta Tuticorin happens, it shakes the overall confidence to the investor. Although we try to say we can't demonstrate through the example, that's unfortunate now, because, we are with very dynamic, we are living in a dynamic world of socio-economic and political changes happening even at the state level. So as a result of that, the investor who is looking for, a license to operate for a long term overall, that sort of the confidence is more necessary. Although what we have as a policy, although what we have as an incentive, in terms of license to operate on a long term is something which is very necessary for the investor, because they are looking at the long term existence into the market, and any threat, any incidents happening, in a country is definitely creating some sort of the doubts or lack of confidence overall to the investor's mind.
I'll keep my intervention short. So, at the risk of sounding contrarian, I really think we'll have to also take into consideration our environmental laws. I mean, not to ease mining and regulatory landscape around mining. That is number one. And as far as sectors like mining are concerned, one should understand they have much longer gestation periods when it comes to return on investment, right? So those sort of things can be a huge deterrent as far as investments into India is concerned, especially from abroad. I actually had a question to my colleagues from the state government. So just wanted to understand, like, now after identification, before the investment comes in, like, is the assessment of the quantities of minerals and things like that carried out already? Or is it done by the investors or whoever is going to venture into the mining? How does it work?
In critical minerals and all these things, AMD and all these things, they will establish the reserves. After establishing the reserves only, will identification of the blocks and put for the auction. So that is why you will give the how much of resources available with us.
I think we have maybe a couple of minutes left. So if there are any questions from the audience, this is your chance to ask them. So yeah, if maybe we can take a couple of questions. Please raise your hand if you have questions. Okay. If you can maybe just introduce yourself, keep it brief, keep it a question, and also just mention who it's addressed to in the panel.
Samir, I think if you can answer this. You're mentioning about the things to be done in the mining sector. I'm Piyush Srivastava from Tata Steel, Natural Resource Division. So, India, we have a regime where permissions takes a lot of time. If you go to Australia, US, permissions are easy. They are very good guidelines. But what is more important there is monitoring. This is where we lack. The level of IBM or Ministry of Coal, the mines, the monitoring part is not so much. Therefore, in terms of compliance, there are lacunas. If that can happen, I think that will improve the efficiency of the mines, and also it will attract investment.
I definitely agree, like 100%. Nothing to counter there. Totally agree with you. I think this has to become a part of probably industry whenever we interface with the government. These things, I'm sure, have been conveyed also in the past.
Yeah.
But if we have to get the critical minerals part right, that definitely there needs to be a renewed discussion. And I think the government is also kind of very focused, and they really have ambitious targets to fulfill as far as renewable energy related ecosystem in India is concerned, right? So I'm sure they'll be much more positive and forthcoming when it comes to mining and critical minerals.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
We're at time. If you have any further questions, please feel free to approach our panelists during the tea break. Thank you all to all of our panelists for joining us today. Please give a warm round of applause for their participation. Thank you.
Thank you. I would request Soumya Jain of IISD to please come and give mementos to our speakers here. We are grateful to them for speaking to us about the investment climate and what we can expect in terms of investments and the ease of doing business, how it is being improved in our country. So I request Soumya to please give mementos. We'll start, Mr. Karmakar, if you could give a memento to a small gift to Mr. Karmakar. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your thoughts. A memento for Samir Kuduru. A memento for Shri Venkata Reddy. A memento for Shri Bhupender Singh Punia. And a memento for Romil Ravi. And a memento for Siddharth Goel. I request I request all of you to please gather for a group photograph. Some of you too. You can have a good photograph. Thank you. We'll take a 15-minute tea break and then we'll come back with the closing plenary session.
उधर ही जाएगा।
Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to please take your seats. We'll start shortly. And if your friends are outside, please ask them to come back in and take their seats. Please clear the aisles. You can continue the conversation when seated. I request all of you to please take your seats. I request all of you to please be seated. We shall now start with our closing plenary. Now, in our this session, the closing plenary, we will encapsulate the biggest takeaways of the sessions over the last 2 days. We have had very informative presentations, plus a lot of exchange of ideas during the panel discussions that we've had during the last 2 days. And now I would like to invite on stage the moderators of these panel discussions to give us the report which has come summing up all that was discussed during that panel discussion. So first, I'd like to invite on stage Rishabh Jain, Senior Program Lead, CEEW, to please come on stage and talk to us about his report. He had, of course, he moderated the panel discussion on building India's capability in processing and beneficiation technologies. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Really glad to see so many people on the second day. Hopefully, you have found the conference and the discussions useful. So I'll try to be very, very brief. There are three, we had a very unique set of panelists yesterday in the first panel discussion from academic institutions and national labs, from Indian PSU, and then, of course, from the industry who are focusing on these critical mineral processing and manufacturing in the country, and recycling also. By the way, Anjani, who was one of our panel discussants yesterday, who was joining remotely, is in here with us today. So in case you would have wanted to interact with him, you can, of course, meet him today. But the broader theme of the panel discussion was, of course, building India's capability in processing and beneficiation technology. And there are three key areas that we discussed and deliberated on. The first one was on the processing technology, on what were the key learnings of some of these companies that have been operating in the past many decades, specifically IREL, which has been into existence for over 70 years now, and some of course, the recent companies that have started doing it only in the recent years. The other bit that we discussed in detail was on the skills and capacity building, which is an important area as we want to scale up some of these sectors in the country. The third one was data sharing and collaboration, because we, of course, discussed that there's a need to build trust and how some of this can be done in more detail. I'll maybe go one by one and maybe on each of these. On the processing technology, we realize that there's a wealth of knowledge that exists with many of the institutions and maybe individuals across these organizations, and there's a need to leverage each other's strength, and maybe strength for some of the minerals that we have not necessarily started processing in India. But say, for instance, in rare earth, there's so much that has already been done, and many of the labs, a lot can be done. That needs to be transferred in some way for the new minerals and requirements that exist. So in that sense, there's a while the industry may not exist, there's a wealth of knowledge that is already there, and it should be leveraged and tapped as we focus on building the processing technology. The other bit that we discussed was on the equipments and the challenges of both indigenization and import. What we realized was that the challenges vary from individual to individual, company to company, and process to process. So while there was not a common theme, but it's an important area that needs to be considered going forward. Skills and capacity building, I think this is a general problem because the area is fairly nascent. And the example that was shared from IIT Hyderabad on new MTech that is being developed on circularity and reuse is a very good example, and maybe other institutional academic labs can take it forward by working more collaboratively with industries and seeing that what is a good entry point for some of the MTech students. The third was on data sharing and collaboration, and one of the key things that was mentioned was by the director IMMT was on the trust aspect, which is very true. I think if the sector needs to move upwards, we need to start building trust with each other so that at least we know that we're not competing with each other, but how can we collaborate together better? So in that sense, I think there's a clear need. What is the role that academic institutions can play? What is the role that institutions like CSIR can play, and even the R&D labs within industry can play? And how can some of these conversations can be more formalized? Of course, there's informally much has been happening, and that is what some of them already mentioned, that there's MOUs, partnerships, etc. But I think there's also then a possibility to formalize this, and in the process, I think through conferences, etc. like these, there'll of course be more peer-to-peer learning and trust building. So that's it from my side. Hope you found it useful. Thank you.
I would now like to invite on stage Dr. Tom Morenhout. He's the Critical Minerals Lead, Columbia University Center on Global Energy Policy. He had moderated the session on strategies for scaling processing for domestic and global markets. So please give him a round of applause. And over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much. I think yesterday on international collaboration and sort of accessing the global institutions and the global networks and obviously the MNCs, the multinational corporations out there, we had quite a diverse panel, and I think it very much reflects the need to engage internationally on this as well. I took away sort of 5 key points of where that is necessary. The first one with respect to research and development, both inwards and outwards, there's actually a lot of companies for which doing R&D is extremely expensive. In India, that can be done at a lower cost with the same level of skill set and infrastructure. But as well, of course, there's the technology access component to it as well. The second one, I think, is feedstock. We spoke quite a bit about that. If you have processing plants, it's the same as when you have recycling plants. You need to run at a very high capacity to make that economic. So you need to have that very steady, reliable feedstock, and international engagement on that is very, very necessary. We gave one specific example of the African region, where India has a whole lot to offer in terms of skills development is one, developing productive nodes, early stage manufacturing, and so forth. So really an interesting partner, and a partner that has a lot of goodwill in Africa, but I would say also in other regions. Latin America, of course, came up. I heard somebody else in the conference, not in our session, talking about their focus on Central Asia. So there is definitely a role to play there to access that feedstock, but also make sure that there's reciprocal benefits. The third one, as I already kind of mentioned, technology transfer, of course, and infrastructure, very much in need of global cooperation on that in the processing side as well. I think some of the other panels also very, very much highlighted how difficult it is to get from that 95% purity to the purity level that is necessary for clean energy applications, whether it is solar PV or batteries and so forth, right? And for that, tech cooperation very much necessary. We had Christy from IRMA, of course, so to talk about international standards, where we noticed that both to attract investment and to just make sure that these supply chains are more responsible in nature, linking into standards can be very important. And then the fifth, of course, is offtake, right? India is a massive, has massive growth potential, is currently basically executing that growth potential, which is really impressive. But you need these very reliable markets right now, and I think offtake agreements for that are everything, and those are even more facilitated when there is some form of free trade or free investment type of frameworks going on there. I've hammered enough now, I think, about the CMA with the US, but this can look differently as well. Finally, we spoke about specific institutions that could be turbocharged to support this processing development in India. MSP, obviously a critical one, where the framework can be used both to access feedstock, but also, I would say, to attract investment in India specifically on the processing side. We also mentioned ICEP, the Quad, and so forth. I think throughout all of that, and sort of my final point, and I think throughout the whole workshop, one sort of key lesson that I learned and that I very much liked was that it's very essential to be extremely practical about this, right? Pilot projects, try, learn, get that iterative process where some things are not going to work out, but we're going to learn about that, both with respect to technology as well as investment systems. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Thank you very much for being here these 2 days as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Now I would like to invite Siddharth Goyal, Senior Policy Advisor, International Institute for Sustainable Development. He had moderated the session of policy incentives and benefits of investing in India. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I have the benefit of summarizing a session which just happened. So depending on how much attention you paid, you might already know everything that occurred. So we obviously, had a panel which had representatives from central governments, state governments, and industry bodies. And there were a wide-ranging focus of discussions, both on what are both the central and state level incentives that are available, for mineral processing in India. So what was highlighted is there are PLI schemes, production-linked incentive schemes, in 14 sectors, including chemicals, including battery manufacturing. And a lot of these are in allied sectors to mineral refining. So there's a huge opportunity available at a central level. Even at a state level, so we had representatives from Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, and they highlighted, the fact that a policy ecosystem has been created within those states, which include areas like capital subsidies, up to 20% of capital subsidies in some states, the availability of infrastructure, support infrastructure, railways infrastructure, and also a very competitive electricity tariffs and availability of water. A few other key takeaways were really the importance of a cluster-based approach. So really looking at ways in which states can collaborate together, in terms of creating an attractive ecosystem. So for example, the waste that's generated in mining could actually be used for recycling as an input for recycling in a parallel state. Similarly, creating refined products could actually be used for cathode, anode, cell production in neighboring states. So really looking at regional approaches as well in terms of creating a policy ecosystem. Linked to that, something very interesting that was highlighted by Invest India was the presence of PCPIRs, which are petroleum, chemical, and petrochemical investment regions. And the fact that some of these regions quite overlap with some of the states where battery production is taking place. So that provides an opportunity to have an integrated manufacturing setup. Other key takeaways highlighted were the importance of generating investor confidence. So given that critical minerals are a relatively new and growing industry in India, it's very important to have a regulatory certainty to ensure investor confidence, and also to create enabling policy frameworks and highlight the importance of ESG and sustainability standards. Another sort of 2 or 3 key points were really, it's important to understand the market of byproducts. So rather than only looking at one specific mineral, there's a lot of potential of really looking at byproducts of these minerals, which can be a secondary source of the materials, and it can help improve both the economics and promote circularity. Finally, something that I took away was really how important state governments are in the discussion on critical minerals, both in terms of obviously providing incentives, but also really where a lot of these mineral resources lie, and the potential for these states to actually consider downstream value addition in terms of moving from upstream mining to processing to all the way to battery production. Yeah, so I think that's a broad summary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siddharth. I would now like to invite Dr. Veena Kumari D, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Mines, to please give the closing remarks. Please give ma'am a round of applause and welcome her on the podium.
And thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon to all of you. I am standing before you in place of Secretary Mines. Sir has some important meeting which has come suddenly, so has requested me to give the closing remark. So 2 days, 1.5 days of deliberations on critical minerals. It was a good time spent here. I was here whole day. The day yesterday we started the dialogue with the setting of the tone by the thought leaders of the sector, the Secretary Mines, Mr. Arunabha Ghosh and Professor. They have given us the policy, existing policy, what we have already done and what we have to do. And I thank all the session moderators for giving a brief about the sessions. We had 3 sessions, one about increasing the domestic supply and how Indian critical mineral sector can cater to the global supply chain, and the ongoing research in critical mineral by various labs in the country, as well as today's discussion on the policy framework available in the country for critical minerals. So what we were discussing in the last 2 days is about how to overcome the vulnerabilities in the supply chain of critical minerals. And when we talk about the vulnerability in the supply chain of the critical minerals, we need to parallelly think about how what are the linkage between the different entirely different sectors to support this effort of securing a strong supply chain. Starting from education sector, interestingly, need to create a skilled human resource in the country. For creating that, we need to create interest in the sector. Very rightly, one of the panelists yesterday was saying that nobody is interested even in joining the study on mineral sector or the inorganic chemistry. So starting from very basic level, we need to start to create a skilled manpower in the country, creating interest among the students, developing or creating a curriculum or the courses in our in our IITs and our colleges, so that parallelly we have a skilled manpower, not only catering to India, but to the world also. And then this skilled manpower can help us in improving the exploration in the country, mining in the country, processing, and also developing downstream product. When we talk about exploration, we have a very, very old and a very renowned government exploration agency in the country, which is doing wonderfully well. and is now supported by the private exploration agencies, which are notified by the government of India and some of our PSCs. Still, we need technology, advanced technology in exploration, which we may have to get from other countries. We need equipments where we are really lagging in equipments, whether it is for the exploration or for the mining. And the technology for exploration, technology and equipment for exploration is one area which we need to concentrate. And then to increase the supply of minerals, we need to do domestic supply increase, and then we have to go out and look into the international supply available. And in the domestic, what we were also discussing internally, we have what we have. We cannot kind of increase the supply which is already there. We can find the supply which we have not yet found, resources which we have not yet found, but we cannot do much about what is there. So we need to look into alternate source of supply, that where there we come the recycling. And also one area which is very important is tailing. So recycling and tailing is an area which we need to concentrate. And when today's discussion, I learned that, yes, when we talk about setting up of the processing plants, we need to think about the kind of plants which can process other minerals also, which are available in the tailings, which are associated with the main minerals. And when we process such mineral, when our companies, corporate process such minerals, is it beneficial or is it incentivized enough for them to kind of invest additional amount of money for the technology and for the regular OPEX to process such mineral? Do we have a policy to encourage processing of associated mineral, which as government we need to think about? We need a policy gap there in encouraging the processing of associated mineral, either from as a tailing or along associated along with the main minerals. Then one very bright scenario which came out in the last yesterday is that we have enough internal capacity for processing of these minerals. Many of our labs are doing wonderful work, and they can support the industry in developing the required processing technology. So it's only a matter of connecting the dot where the work is already been done, where the requirement is. So I am sure that these kind of initiatives from the ministry will be able to help in connecting the company which are in need of the technology and the labs which is there to provide the technology. So, and sorry, also very happy to learn about the various incentive schemes which is available in different states. And so there is an ecosystem available. Maybe there is a little bit more coordination is required from all of us to make the information sharing between all the stakeholders concerned. So this is a first step. And yeah, I forgot. While doing all these things, we need to take care of sustainable development, and that is the need of the hour, and that is required to ensure our commitment to the future generation and also the welfare of the mining affected people. India has done a lot on that through our amendments in the Act, and we can be a thought leader for that for the whole of the world. And today somebody was talking about offshore mining. I would like to tell Samir, we have done amendment to the Act for offshore mining. We are working on the rules for that, and India will be the leader in offshore mining because not many countries have done much of offshore mining, and we were working on that for the last since August 2023. So we have already have exploration done in the offshore area, and we have some blocks available for putting out for the NIT also. So that is what we have done in yesterday and today morning, and this is just an initiative, and I'm sure that this effort will continue, and we'll be working together with all the stakeholders more closely in the days to come. And I thank Shakti Foundation, CEEW, and IISD for helping or organizing this workshop along with the Ministry of Mines, and also thank all the panelists for coming here and sharing their knowledge, the sharing, giving us a glimpse of the vast knowledge they hold there. So what we realized is like it's quite interesting, and it's there are lots of people with lots of idea. I mean, very thorough understanding about what they are doing, and we need to really pick their brain and work together for the betterment and for making the critical mineral sector in India more and more dynamic and catering to the needs of the global supply chain. Thanks to all for sharing your thoughts, and we in the Ministry of Mines is there to support all the required like support in terms of making the policy required, identify the gaps and preparing the policy. And we are continuing with we will be continuing with this discussion forward. Thanks. Thank you again.
Thank you, ma'am. Your words are indeed very encouraging, and I'm sure the ecosystem will be one that will bloom from here, and India will definitely be able to come up to some sort of scale to be able to meet the needs for critical minerals in our country and abroad. With this, we'll now take a lunch break. Lunch is being served in the same area, which is the pre-function area of the Silver Oak, one level down. And I wanted to also remind you, if you haven't seen the expo, we have some stalls in the Silver Oak area. Do visit them as well. Right. I was just told that the stalls were there, so I hope all of you have already visited on day one. So I request for a group photograph, all the team members of Shakti, CEEW, IISD, please come on stage, and ma'am also, if you could come on stage with your ministry colleagues for a group photograph. I request the team members from Shakti, CEEW, IISD to please come on stage for a group photograph. Okay. Request all of you to please join us for lunch, one floor down in the pre-function area of the Silver Oak.
आलोक के पास, हाँ आलोक को बोलने की मूवमेंट तो कितनी है